One second she was crying on screen, fiery as ever, jaw clenched, ready to blow. And the next, gone. No lead up, no goodbye. They cut from a scene she should have dominated and moved on without a trace. No farewell interview. No dramatic exit. Not even a throwaway line from the other cast. Nothing. Jasmine Pineda disappeared mid-arc, mid-conflict, mid-season, and left the entire fanbase frozen. For a moment, everybody thought their episode had glitched. People paused, rewound, switched apps. Some closed and reopened their platform, convinced it had skipped 10 minutes. Fans checked Reddit threads in real time. Comments exploded under the episode. Wait, where's Jasmine? Did my internet glitch? Why didn't she get an ending? It wasn't confusion. It was full-blown shock, and not the good kind. The kind built for finale twists. This wasn't dramatic. This was emotionally vandalizing. Jasmine was the engine, and TLC turned the car mid-race without warning the rest of the audience that the keys had been pulled. And people felt it in their gut. This wasn't a forgettable supporting character with a quiet phase-out. This was Jasmine, the most reactive, unpredictable, overly invested powder keg they had out of everyone this season. A woman who dragged confessionals into chaos and cried with her whole body. The same woman who rallied fan bases and blew up social feeds whether you loved or hated her. Still, somehow, made you feel something every week, and now she was gone, like she'd never even been there. You don't erase a character like Jasmine mid-finale unless something happened. This is Oliva, and you're watching TLC Drama Files. If you're as obsessed with 90-day drama as we are, hit that button and drop your theories in the comments. Because this isn't normal. The scariest part? It wasn't the silence after she was missing. It was the silence during. No dramatic bridge music, no Meanwhile in Michigan, no storyline handoff. Production just pretended the emotional center of the franchise didn't exist anymore. No closure. No fallout. But real fans don't forget. And as soon as the episode ended, the theories ignited. They remembered every flicker in her expression during the last 3 episodes. They rewatched scenes and caught what they hadn't noticed the first time Jasmine wasn't slowing down. Her screen time was being sliced down. Quietly, strategically, maybe even intentionally. If Jasmine didn't just leave, who decided she was leaving? It didn't start with the finale. That was just the impact. The actual disappearance? It started weeks earlier, soft, sneaky, almost invisible, unless you were really watching TLC didn't yank the cord. They dimmed the lights, 1 frame at a time. Rewatch episode 10. Jasmine's still fiery, still sharp, still the emotional core. But then, look at episode 11. Her tone's flat. Her reactions seem rehearsed. She cuts herself off mid-sentence like she's self-editing in real time. She doesn't explode. She contains, restricts, hesitates. That's not how Jasmine works. Her whole brand is unleashed now. Apologize, maybe. By episode 12, it's not about what she says anymore, it's about what she doesn't. The woman usually dominating entire group scenes is suddenly sitting in the background. Her laugh sounds forced. Her tension looks high. Her energy is wrong. She's there, but feels like she's not allowed to be. Fans noticed her eyes. That's what made it eerie. They weren't tracking the conversation. They were darting off screen. Like she was watching for someone or something, her gaze broke focus in every key scene. She wasn't lost in thought. She was checking. Almost like she was afraid to say what she really wanted to say, and that changed everything. Suddenly, her presence didn't match her position in the season. Jasmine had been in the middle of every storyline. Jealousy arguments, flip-outs, emotional reconnections. She carried more drama than 3 other couples combined. And then, out of nowhere, she felt demoted. In her own arc, TLC didn't drop her. They started scaling her down like she was shrinking alive on camera. By the time episode 13 aired, her scenes had gone from full-blown arguments with crying and pacing to chopped half dialogues with no follow-through. Her most explosive storylines had no climax. Huge conflict moments ended in weird cuts that didn't match her usual emotional rhythm. It was like someone took a sharp knife to the timeline and stitched it back together with tape and guessing on-screen time. Less than 6 minutes in one episode where she used to dominate entire segments. No confessionals, no reaction shots. They stopped showing how she processed anything. She became a side character in a life she used to run like a full-blown soap villain. That's not growth. That's not resolution. That's erasure. Fandom pages started clocking her deleted energy. They noticed when music cues played too long, like production was stalling for time. They scored how many times the camera skipped Jasmine to land on someone less compelling. You don't fumble a leading character unless something off-screen is collapsing. And that's when viewers stopped saying, "Where's Jasmine?" They started asking, why are they hiding her? If she wasn't fading out naturally, then was someone helping push her off the edge behind the scenes? The moment that finale cut to credits without Jasmine, the internet flipped. TikTok was a mess. Clips of fans crying, screaming, dead silent with stunned faces. Some sat frozen, mouthing, "What just happened?" While others already had captions like, "Justice for Jasmine," popping up in bright red font. And that was before midnight. On Twitter, it was worse. That place turned into an emotional crime scene. People weren't asking questions. They were making accusations. This was calculated. They did her dirty. We spent all season watching her spiral for what? The betrayal ran deep, not because Jasmine was perfect, but because the drama she carried was personal, vulnerable, wild, but rooted in pain. And when someone gives that much, whether you like her or not, you stick around for the fallout. You want to see what happens after all the yelling, after the crying, after the chaos dies down. You don't cut the camera before the apology. But TLC did, and fans felt like they were robbed of the point. That's why this wasn't drama anymore. It was emotional confusion. People stayed up to rewatch old episodes looking for missed signs. They clipped earlier scenes that looked totally normal before the finale, but now made zero sense. Weird jump cuts. Confessionals that sounded like the middle of a sentence was missing. It started to feel like Jasmine wasn't written out. She was edited out, piece by piece. Reddit threads broke it down with timestamps. This scene ends abruptly and picks up again 2 scenes later with her boyfriend referencing something we didn't see. Another post pointed out that her last major argument just cut, no resolution, no aftermath, no confessional explaining her side. Viewers didn't need to invent theories. The edit was already missing too much. What TLC didn't count on. Fans remember details. They remember a stray look in episode 5. A pattern in her outfits. A mid-season teaser that promised payoff we never saw. They remember the emotional investment they were promised. And the second it felt incomplete, they turned the spotlight on the people behind the cameras. But one thing reality TV always forgets. Fans notice everything. Within 24 hours of the finale airing, TikTok turned into a digital forensic lab. Fans were stitching Jasmine's older explosive scenes beside her newer ones, and the contrast hit like a truck. Full-on screaming in the earlier episodes, barely a whisper by the end. It felt less like character growth, and more like someone had pulled her volume knob down without telling the viewers. One creator synced clips from episode 3 and episode 13. Same Jasmine, same partner, same fight style. But in the final episode, the emotional build disappeared. The argument jumped from tension to cutscene faster than her usual meltdowns. She didn't walk off. She just blinked, and the camera wasn't on her anymore. That's not pacing. That's manipulation. Another fan zoomed in on micro-expressions. In confessionals, Jasmine's energy always matched her chaos. Hair wild, eyes wide, shoulders tight. But in these chopped-together scenes, her face said more than the edit allowed. Her mouth smiled, but her eyes didn't follow. Her voice kept a flat, pulled tone. Fans began calling it the edited silence look. But here's where it got spooky. Fans started noticing how her co-stars treated her differently in group scenes. The shift wasn't loud, but it was cold. A couple of them stopped making eye contact altogether. One scene was clipped to show only half a conversation, but fans could tell someone else had been talking just off screen. The geometry of the room didn't match the dialogue. Someone had been there and then been sliced out. Is it possible other cast members already knew what was about to happen? That the decision wasn't sudden, but everyone else was just pretending like it hadn't already been made? Some viewers think Jasmine knew too. In those final episodes, her eyes weren't pleading. They were calculating. She wasn't fighting anymore. Maybe not because she didn't want to, but because it wouldn't have made it to air anyway. The closer you look, the more the silence starts screaming. The episodes didn't just cut Jasmine out. They ghosted her slowly. If you track it week by week, it's unsettling. The pacing doesn't crash all at once. It drips. You start to feel it, but you can't quite say what's off. Then you realize the rhythm you were used to, the emotional tempo she always brought, is gone. Not lowered. Removed. In episode 8, she's in the center of a blow-up. She's crying, yelling, making her points with wild hand gestures. 10 minutes of uninterrupted chaos. It felt like classic Jasmine. But by episode 11, she shows up for barely 4 minutes, and in those 4 minutes, half the lines feel cut short. There's no reaction cam. There's no emotional resolution. It plays like someone dragged her scenes onto the chopping block during editing and stitched together whatever fragments were left. And it was never announced, it was felt. The energy around her changed. You could see it in the cutaways. Conversations where she would normally jump in, nothing. Group dynamics that she'd usually dominate, suddenly she's silent in the background, blurred into side frame positioning like some glorified extra in a season she was carrying on her back. Fans didn't miss it, they felt it in their bones. The tone got colder too, and not from her. From the camera. It stopped treating her like a lead. The angles were harsher. Edits snappier. Her audio came in flat. Confessionals that would normally open with 5 seconds of emotion-building music launched straight into mid-sentence tension. Conversations felt Frankenstein together. People started saying on Reddit, that jump cut made no sense. How did we get from crying to calm in one line? What was that transition? Then the theories started. Was Jasmine being pulled out quietly, weeks before fans were supposed to notice? One thread pointed out that in 2 consecutive episodes, her narrative arc cut off mid-conflict. One scene, where she's clearly upset, dissolves into a location change with no follow-through. Her boyfriend responds to a question Jasmine never asked in the footage we saw. Nothing connected. It wasn't just confusing, it was deliberate. There's no way multiple episodes get chopped like that by accident. Fans started to call it what they believed it was. A quiet push-out. Not a firing in one clean moment, but a slow editing strategy to reduce her visibility, soften the emotional arc, and eventually make her absence less noticeable. Production does this sometimes. Editors start trimming one person down to reduce backlash before they fully drop the axe. Nothing official, no scandal news, no reunion reveal. Because if they ease the viewers into it, they think people won't rebel. But this time, people noticed anyway. Because Jasmine wasn't a small personality you could phase out gently. She was fire and chaos and honesty in a franchise built on fake tears and staged cliffhangers. When they tried to cut her down, the temperature of the show dropped. Fans could feel when their primary source of intensity was being erased. And the internet had receipts. At this point, the fandom wasn't debating whether she was gone. They were investigating how long she'd actually been leaving the consensus. She was already halfway out before we even realized. But here's the twist that added fuel back into a story production hoped would quietly die out. Jasmine didn't talk. She didn't post a full statement. She didn't throw any public tantrums. She went silent. But her Instagram said everything. Publicly quiet. But her Instagram said otherwise. Jasmine didn't need to go live. She didn't drop a tearful goodbye video, didn't fire shots at TLC, didn't even name names. All she did was go quiet. And for someone like Jasmine, silence was louder than any tell-all. She'd always been constant on socials, oversharing, posting emotional rants, clapping back in comments. But suddenly, that stream dried up. The captions turned cryptic. A single heart emoji, a blurry image, a line from a quote nobody had heard before. When the truth is edited, silence feels like betrayal. No tags, no context, no drama. And still, it completely changed the energy. Because if you know Jasmine, you know she never keeps it bottled in. That's what made the change suspicious. Instead of raging, she started liking comments. Quiet, strategic likes on posts from fans saying, TLC did you dirty? You deserve better, or they erased you on purpose. Those likes spread like wildfire. Screenshots of her liked posts ended up in every fan thread across platforms. One simple tap of approval told fans what she wasn't allowed to scream. This wasn't just passive social media lurking, this was strategy. And before anyone could say she was being dramatic again, she went radio silent again. Everything she posted, she left vague enough that TLC couldn't legally call her out, but clear enough that her followers read the message loud and clear. People became obsessed, trying to piece together the meaning. Was the flower emoji in her bio a quiet symbol of rebirth? Was the blurry mirror selfie a dig at how the show distorted her reflection? Every move she made felt like a code dropped into a conspiracy we weren't meant to solve. But fans refused to stop looking. Before, the question was, where did she go? Now, it was, why can't she say where? What she didn't post hit harder than anything she ever said. Reality TV doesn't run on truth. It runs on structure. And behind every yelling match, every walk-off, every tear-stained pillow, is a Plan A network-approved arc. A rhythm that cast members are expected to follow. On-camera chaos is fine, so long as it fits the outline. But the second a cast member starts rewriting their own character in real time, that's when producers stop letting the cameras roll. People assume reality TV is unscripted. It's not. It's strategic. Especially on a show like 90 Day Fiancé, where producers interview cast in real time and then guide scenes based on framing they need later, that's why confessionals matter. That's why episodes are edited backwards sometimes. To match the ending, the network wants the audience to feel Jasmine was never the type to stick to a template. That's why people watched her. Her emotional honesty wasn't polished, it was raw. She didn't wait for questions to finish, she spiraled with intention. But somewhere in those last few weeks, that honesty might have stopped working in their favor. When someone screams on schedule, great. When they start questioning why they're being pushed to scream again, that's a problem. Fans started suspecting Jasmine no longer agreed with how her arc was framed. Maybe she felt cornered into being the unstable one. Maybe she tried to add layers the show didn't want to use. Either way, once she stopped fully performing, editing picked up the scissors. This wasn't the first time 90 Day producers softened, twisted, and condensed truth to fit the scene. But what made Jasmine's case feel colder was how deliberately they phased her out. Like they wanted her gone, but wanted it quiet. No promo, no fallout, no confrontation. Snip her speech, shrink her arc, and hope no one notices, but the audience did. And it raised a much bigger question. Other cast members have lashed out, coasted through storylines, even gone totally off rails. And yet, they got send-offs, redemptions, spins. Jasmine didn't. But if it's control they wanted, why now? And why her? The moment wasn't just quiet, it was hollow. Fans didn't walk away from that finale ranting about Jasmine being toxic. They weren't relieved she was gone. They were angry. Not at her, at the way she was removed. Because it didn't feel like a natural end or a dramatic turning point. It felt like hitting the brakes 5 minutes before the emotional climax. And then pretending the story had wrapped up neatly, and the viewers could feel it. They had followed her through every breakdown, every overreaction, every raw, dramatic, sometimes messy moment. They didn't always agree with her, but they understood her. Jasmine made people feel something each week. That's what reality TV thrives on, emotion. Human messiness, love and pain tangled together until it erupts. But here, when the final edit rolled out, her side of the story had been stripped bare. Her conflict was unresolved. She had no exit, no moment, not even a line. Fans weren't just mad that she was gone. They were mad they never got the healing, the disaster, or even the damn explanation. She was the center of the season. And they erased her like she was a background couple from a minute-long TikTok recap. That erasure cut deep. Reddit threads exploded with side-by-side breakdowns. Not just scenes without Jasmine, but scenes that needed her. Dialogue got awkward, emotional tension dropped. Final episodes that were supposed to build into chaos just hovered in place. Edits were blunt and jittery, like the heart had been ripped out of the show, and the crew was pretending the beat was still pumping. Fans started commenting, "This finale felt cold. Something's missing. Why does everything feel empty now?" There was no fire, no center of gravity. And the weirdest part? Nobody even said her name. Cast members didn't acknowledge her being gone. The silence was so sharp, it felt edited into the script. And once viewers started picking at that thread, they couldn't stop. They weren't just frustrated, many felt manipulated. One fan said, "I feel like I watched an entire season of build-up to a 30-second skipped scene." Another commented, "Jasmine poured her whole personality into this show. They cut her like a line item in the budget." People don't like feeling played. And when you build your franchise on emotional chaos, you better respect the people providing it. Jasmine didn't flirt around the edge. She dove into fire weekly. Her relationship was volatile. Her confessions were on the verge of tears most of the time. Her presence alone made even dull scenes feel electric. Removing someone like that without narrative payoff doesn't just break immersion, it breaks trust. And once that trust breaks, the show doesn't feel the same. Suddenly, emotional arcs freeze mid-motion. Reactions stop making sense. Other cast members feel disconnected because the person pulling all the emotional strings behind the scenes no longer exists in the edit. This wasn't a cast adjustment. This was structural collapse. No one's saying Jasmine's story had to end on a redemption arc, or even with clapback drama, but it had to end with clarity, with context, with something. The season didn't just lose a character, it lost its emotional engine. People didn't realize how central Jasmine was until she vanished, and the story narrative fell apart behind her absence. Pull someone who carries the weight, and everything else breaks. Jasmine never held back. When she was hurt, it showed. When she was furious, it exploded. And when she felt betrayed by a partner, a friend, or the whole production, she didn't water it down for the cameras. No passive-aggressive side glances, no soft edits. She reacted, instantly, loudly. Without a script, it worked until it didn't. Producers know exactly what kind of drama they want, calculated chaos. Fights that peak then plateau, emotional meltdowns, but only the kind they can steer, and Jasmine's brand of real, that wasn't always steering friendly. Her honesty was so big, so immediate, it threatened the order behind the chaos. She didn't clock her emotions to the camera angles. She lived them, and that's risky when you're trying to build a clean narrative that runs on structure. Was she too unpredictable? Or worse, for producers, was she too truthful? The show thrives on illusion. That the cast is messy, but manageable, vulnerable, but guided. Jasmine broke that. She didn't play along. Her emotions weren't choreographed, and her transparency didn't check in with production before showing up. If she disagreed with how she was being portrayed, she wasn't subtle. And when you start asking questions that challenge the cut starts returning the favor. So maybe it wasn't that her voice was too loud for viewers. Maybe it was too loud for the format. Because when someone refuses to shrink their truth to fit the edit, reality TV producers do what producers always do. They edit them out. But silence between scenes always means more than a scene that airs. After Jasmine's disappearance, the shift wasn't subtle. It hit the metrics, views dropped. Recap pages started skipping uploads. Even meme accounts, the heartbeat of this fandom's online chaos, went quiet or turned bitter. People weren't laughing anymore. They were bailing. Fast. Longtime fans began boycotting clips from later episodes. Threads popped up saying, "Skip the finale, nothing of value happens." TikTok editors stopped using official footage and started reposting Jasmine's old scenes instead, calling it the real ending. The franchise refused to give. It wasn't about defending her. It was about defending the version of the show that made people care in the first place. Because it wasn't drama that made fans tune in every week. It was investment emotional weight. Vulnerability from someone who would scream, fight, break down, and still show up, scene after messy scene. Jasmine gave that. So when the network cut her cord without closure, fans didn't feel entertained. They felt lied to. And the worst part? TLC didn't say a word, no comment, no press release. No due to unforeseen circumstances. Not even an acknowledgement that she was gone. Silence doesn't just hurt fans, it insults them. It told viewers, "You get what we give you, don't ask questions." But they asked anyway. Audiences went back to earlier episodes, slicing edits like detectives, calling out every missing line, every skipped reaction, every stitch that covered a cut. It became more than drama. It became a rebellion, an emotional mutiny against a network they once trusted to tell messy, human stories. Jasmine didn't have to post. She didn't have to expose anything. The fans did it for her. Because they weren't defending a person. They were defending the part of themselves that felt connected to her truth. Fans didn't cancel Jasmine. The franchise canceled its own credibility. Here's the part that no one expected. Not TLC, not the cast, not even the editors who thought they could trim her out without consequence. Jasmine disappeared from the screen, but not from the conversation. In fact, her absence made her louder. She was cut early, judged hard, mocked in fan groups months ago. But now, she's trending harder than anyone else left, standing at the end of this season. While the rest of the cast faded into predictable post-season interviews and influencer ventures, Jasmine was still everywhere. And she didn't even show up to the finale on TikTok. Her name shot back into the algorithm. Old clips racked up millions of views. People were quoting her, stitching her most chaotic one-liners, recutting the season in fan-made edits with the caption, "What it should have looked like." Instagram fan pages exploded with daily posts. Jasmine was the real main character. This scene hits different now. She carried the season, and they rewarded her by vanishing her. And while the show moved on, viewership didn't. Her follower count grew faster after she was cut. Translation? The audience wasn't done with her. They still aren't. Even people who hated her couldn't stop talking about her. She had the one thing reality TV players dream of: lasting impact. Meanwhile, the cast that did make it to the reunion didn't trend, didn't hold engagement. No one edited tribute videos about them or made emotional threads about their emotional growth. The love shifted. It followed the exit, not the final shot. And this forced the bigger question. If Jasmine was a problem, was that problem more about her attitude or the control she made them lose? She was wild, unpredictable, stubborn, brutally honest, and impossible to box into one clean archetype. And somehow, that also made her unforgettable. Was she messy? Absolutely. But mess gets remembered. Silence doesn't. So while the network quietly edited her into a ghost, the audience resurrected her. Every out-of-context Jasmine moment on TikTok pushed her further past the others. Every fan post rewriting the finale with her side filled in made it clear. Removal wasn't erasure, it was ignition. TLC may have underestimated her volatility, but they really underestimated her pull. This isn't to say she's a hero. She wasn't polished, she made mistakes, sometimes big ones. But viewers would still rather follow someone flawed and real than a cast filled with safe, forgettable filler stories. That's what production forgot when they tried to protect the season's structure instead of closing her arc with respect. The show thought if it didn't show her, she'd stop being part of the story. But now, she's the only story people remember. Whether they planned it or not, TLC created a post-edit icon, a fan base without airtime. A cast-off whose most powerful scenes might be the ones they never aired, Or did they underestimate her ability to outlive the narrative they gave her? The dust hadn't even settled from Jasmine's silent exit when fans locked in on something new. Another cast member, newer to the franchise, but suddenly walking the same tightrope Jasmine walked right before she vanished, you could feel it halfway through the episode. The pacing around them changed. The music shifts got weird. Emotional scenes cut early. The vibe was off. And now the audience isn't watching the show the way they used to. They're watching the edit. They're watching body language, camera angles, background reactions, edges of scenes that feel too quiet or too smooth. They're watching like editors now, which for TLC might be the worst thing that could have happened. Because when someone starts going quiet on screen, fans now don't say they're tired. They say, how long until they Jasmine her? The silence created a new level of clarity, and fans didn't forget how it started last time. Tight smiles, vague confessionals, shrinking reactions, shorter episodes. They're seeing it again. One person is being dialed down. Their fights look chopped. Their screen time is sliced thinner each week. Their energy is being muted, but their presence is still loud enough that fans can feel what's been removed. And that's the problem. Silence doesn't erase someone anymore. It highlights the gap. Jasmine's disappearance trained viewers to read between the edits. Not just what was shown, but what was intentionally withheld. Now every weird transition sets off alarms. Every shortened argument feels suspicious. Every Instagram post from a frustrated cast member gets passed around like a secret message. And if Jasmine's erasure was a warning, this new tension is a response. Reddit's already tracking patterns. TikTok sleuths are posting clips tagged repeat behavior. Fans are calling out TLC's cycle. Elevate someone fast, burn them out, then quietly walk them out the back door while they're still on fire. But the difference now? This time, the audience is early. They're clocking the behavior before the finale. They're scanning for signs before the story vanishes. The network can't rely on silence anymore because fans already know how that silence ends. And Jasmine's ghost? Still floating across every frame that should have been hers. Whenever the energy drops mid-episode, people don't say, "This is boring." They say, "This is where Jasmine would have snapped." Whenever a new scene cuts awkwardly, someone comments, "We're missing something again." She became the standard. The warning sign. The reason fans are watching closer. And now the next cast member on the chopping block has become the new ticking clock. How long before their edit thins out? How long before their voice goes flat? How long before they look off screen and stop talking? Because fans aren't asking if it's going to happen again. They're asking who's next. TLC may have won the battle over one storyline, but they woke up a much more dangerous thing. A fan base that's paying attention. And what's coming next? Let's just say Jasmine might be gone from the credits, but her story set fire to a fuse TLC still hasn't diffused. And someone else is about to be standing on top of it.